Sports Lounge 222. Travis Krins here. Nathan Stacking there. What do you got on the menu today?
A pretzel chip here.
Good.
And a drink.
A drink, do you say?
Yes. There's water and 7-Up in there. Maybe a little...
Water and 7-Up.
Maybe a little potato drink in there. A little vodka.
How dare you. NBA draft?
On the Sabbath, no less.
Oh, there you go. Don't drink and do Google chats. NBA draft. I'm choked up about it. Wrapped up. The big story is that Jim Butler went to the Timberwolves. And Timberwolves gave up their first-round pick, which was Lauri Markkanen. That's awful. Gave up Zach LaVine, who tore his ACL, so he ain't going to play for a while. And they gave up Chris Dunn, who's not very good at basketball. So the Bulls got those three guys, and they gave up their 16th pick overall. Some big bastard from Creighton. So how would you assess this trade?
Well, initially I was a little bummed that the Timberwolves lost Zach LaVine just because he is he seemed like he was coming into his own with the his three-point shooting. Obviously, I like the way that he can dunk, in the slam dunk contest, though that doesn't win you any basketball games. But then, in losing Chris Dunn hurt a little bit. But the more you think about the trade, I was more astounded that they swapped first-round picks with the Bulls and didn't have to just outright give up their first-round pick. Because this Patton guy, this Justin Patton from Creighton,
Josh?
big center, yep,
Whatever.
he's immediately going to help on the defensive end. The Timberwolves just got rid of Nikola Pekovic, who was supposed to be that guy who would step up for the Kevin Love, and now you don't know what they're going to do with a Shabazz Muhammad or a Gorgui Dieng, but I mean the Timberwolves are looking really good now, and dare I say that the Bulls got fleeced in this deal, and the rebuilding process is definitely beginning, and I'm kind of surprised that it's happening now in Fred Hoiberg's third season. You would think if you wanted to go in a different direction, and maybe Hoiberg has a part in all of this too with the style that he wants to play, but you would think that if you're going to do an outright rebuild, that you would do it with a new head coach.
Why are Bulls fans, or why do people think the Bulls got fleeced, as you say? Well,
as you mentioned, LaVine's coming off a knee injury.
Yes.
Dunn sucked. Markkanen is a guy who can shoot decent from the field, but he doesn't rebound. He's not great. And plus, and you're giving up a guy who is an all-star in his prime, and you didn't. It's like I said, it's not even that they got Minnesota's first-round pick. They just swapped first-round picks. So there are question marks with the guys that they got. And now the Timberwolves get Jimmy Butler, who is, as I say, an all-star in his prime. However, the Bulls were, 2 years away from potentially having to give Butler the super max deal. And that's something the Timberwolves cannot offer him. So, and I don't know if they didn't think they'd have a real good chance at re-signing Butler, but you look at the haul back, or the grand scope of this trade, and it would seem as though the Timberwolves got the way better end of the deal, getting an all-star, plus getting a first-round pick, who is going to help them on the defensive end, you would imagine, here in his rookie season.
Do you remember last year's draft and the trade talks? And this is basically
the Bulls wanted Chris Dunn.
It was going to be the first-round pick, which was Chris Dunn. That's who they would have picked. It would have been Zach LaVine.
Yep.
And it would have been, I don't know, maybe this year's first-round pick. It's basically the exact same trade that it was last year. And now they have that same trade this year, and they get whoever the hell they get. They were 41-41. They were tied with Miami for the 8th seed, and they won the tiebreaker, so they got to play Boston and lose in 5 games. So
Six. They did win the
was
first
it
2 in
6?
Boston. Yeah, it was. It was
Holy
6.
Christ! It felt like a sweep. So they
it was a sweep after the first 2 games.
They trade Jimmy Butler, who's a very good player and an all-star, and a good defender and can score. But with him, they barely made the playoffs. So I'm not sad to see Jimmy Butler go. With him, they barely made the playoffs. So I'm not.
But is that more a fact of Hoiberg's offense and style of play that he likes to incorporate and wants the guys to do? Butler was really good with Tom Thibodeau, and I think that's what makes this a better trade for the Timberwolves too. Is that Butler and Thibodeau have a respect for one another. I believe Butler likes Thibodeau. I don't think he had any hard feelings about him and getting fired and stuff. So now, and I do think that as long as Thibodeau's in Minnesota and Minnesota's trending in the right direction in terms of playoffs and where they're at in the grand scheme of things in the Western Conference, and in terms of maybe getting to the conference finals, dethroning Golden State at some point, I think the Timberwolves have just as good a chance as anyone out there to be able to keep Butler's services. And, Zach LaVine was in line for a big payday. Now you don't have to worry about that. You can focus on Wiggins, you can focus on Towns and Butler, and then assemble the rest of the pieces around them. I've heard a couple of people. Sounds like the echo's there.
Great echo. Stupid.
Great echo.
Fucking echo. Pisses me off.
I have heard from a few people, though, that they think maybe Tyus Jones. What?
Is it good? Nope. Yep. How about now? Good. Yep. Nope. Good. Nope.
Echo's still there. That's good. I have heard from a few people that think that maybe Tyus Jones is in line for a more enhanced role and think that he can do that role that the Timberwolves need him to behind Ricky Rubio. I would think that Rubio will be the starting point guard here for the Timberwolves in the for the foreseeable future. So all in all, I think the Timberwolves are in a pretty decent spot here, but they do have to, like I say, keep winning and keep improving if they want any chance at keeping Butler after 2 years.
From what I saw, apparently it was the Bulls could have had Ricky Rubio and kept their first-round pick, or we'll give you Zach LaVine, and then you have to give us their first-round pick. So I would rather have Zach LaVine and give up that pick, number 16, because there was nobody there at 16 that I really cared about. So, yeah, you want to take that the big bastard from Creighton. That's not going to be any good. That's fine with me. Before we start talking about knocking off the greatest team of all time, how about we talk about finishing 500, and how about we talk about making the goddamn playoffs? Because this team, a lot of people thought they were making it last year, and I believe they were two games worse than they were the year before with Sam Mitchell. So they sure as hell. I don't know how you can say last year was an improvement. It was, at best, they stayed the same.
They gave up. They constantly had the lead going into halftime. They gave up the most.
They did.
Gave up the most leads out of any team in the NBA. Fourth quarter defense certainly was not great. So, and they're one of the worst shooting teams in the league. Now, Butler
they
is
didn't
not
really.
a great.
They did not.
He's not a great shooter, but he's clutch. He's very clutch down the stretch. He is that veteran. He gives that veteran presence now amongst the two stars and Wiggins and Towns. So I think Minnesota. And plus, with the way that the rest of the West is shaping up, I'm sure we'll get to the Clippers here in a second. But they look like they're going to be trashed this year. The Lakers will improve. Utah's going to lose Gordon Hayward, maybe George Hill. And I'm not completely convinced yet that the Portland Trailblazers are going to be able to find a way to make it back to the playoffs, even though they do have C.J. McCollum and Damian Lillard. So, Zach Collins certainly helps in that regard. And I hope we'll get to the Kings here as well. But
the Kings were great. They were great.
Overall, I love what the Kings did. But I think overall, if we want to be real and honest with ourselves here, Memphis also, you don't know how long Conley and Gasol and Randolph are all going to be.
I like Memphis. Obviously, I like them more than you do. We know this.
Yes, you do. And at some point here, Memphis is going to have to rebuild a little bit here. So I think the Timberwolves are in a great position here to not only make the playoffs this year, but for years to come, assuming they can keep Butler. And I would say that they should shoot this year for a 6 seed. 6 seed, I think, is good.
Wow.
If you're a 4 or a 5, then you're going to have to play the Warriors in the second round. No one wants that. So 6 or 7, I think, is right in their wheelhouse. Of course, we still need to see what happens in free agency. But I think the Timberwolves are a bona fide playoff team for sure this year.
So you think they're making the playoffs? They would have to win the 8 seed this year, won 41 games. So the 6 seed Oklahoma City won 47. So you're thinking they're going to win 45 to 47, 48 games. They're going to make a 15-win increase?
I think so. I think Butler can do that.
Well, if you're going to be the 7th seed, yeah.
I mean, you don't know for sure that the West, that it's going to take 47 games to win the West this year. I think there are going to be quite a few bad teams in the West. Like, say, the Clippers will be worse.
Well, how about this?
The Jazz. Yeah.
You have the Spurs. You have Golden State. You have Houston. You know they're going to be good. Those are 3
Spurs,
teams.
by the way, have some question marks too.
Who?
I know the Spurs.
Okay. Well, they're all. I mean, they're gonna win 55 games. Right. Yep. There's 3 teams there. You have Oklahoma City with Westbrook. You expect them to be good. No, you have the Grizzlies. You don't like the Grizzlies. You got the Jazz. Maybe the Jazz fall down. Portland. Maybe Portland falls down.
As well.
Nuggets finished a game out of the playoffs, so you can't discount the Nuggets. They could be.
I'll discount them right now.
Oh, okay.
By the way, I'm in the dark here. Let me
You are in the dark.
I know. What the hell is this here? We'll figure something out.
You've got them for a 6 seed. If they're if they're a 7 or an 8 and they got to play Golden State or Houston or San Antonio, that's not great. So
right.
I'm not as big on the Timberwolves as everybody else has been here with the playoffs and all this stuff the past couple of years. I think it would be what you would say would be a huge disappointment if they don't make the playoffs this year.
I think huge might be a small stretch. It would be disappointing. They certainly have to improve. If they are 1 to 2 games out of the playoffs, I would say that would be disappointing. I think that's your threshold. Anything below a game or 2 or 3 from the playoffs, that would qualify to me as a disappointing season. And it would especially be disappointing if, as I am kind of predicting right now, the West is not going to be nearly as good this year. You won't have to win 47 games
to get a 6 seed.
To get 6 seed or a 7 seed.
Then, Portland got the 8 seed and they finished 500. So if you can go 500, you may have a chance.
And I think they will.
Here's what I want. Show me something, Minnesota basketball team. Finish 500. Finish with more wins than losses. Don't finish last in your division because I think top to bottom, that's the toughest division in the West. Because, Utah, at least last year it was. We'll see what happens next year. Utah.
The Southwest might be the toughest.
Dallas is bad. New Orleans, we'll see. But the Timberwolves were the last place team, so if they're taking a jump up, and I think every team in the Northwest may finish right around 500 at the worst. It's not very top heavy. It's very, they could all be average to above average, where every other division has one real, huh?
Middle of the road, middle of the pack, and I say that we say this right now, or I say this right now that the Timberwolves will be better, than some of these teams like Utah or the Clippers. But we do have to wait and see how free agency plays itself out. And that's gonna. I'm saying right now that the Timberwolves make the playoffs here, but I do need to see what they can do in free agency, and I do need to see what some of these other teams in the Western Conference do, or the players that they lose and whatnot, because that ultimately will factor in to how improved Minnesota can be and if they can dethrone anyone versus other teams getting worse while Minnesota got better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, right now I'm saying no playoffs. I think they're going to be close, but no playoffs this year. And when people talk about, oh, they're going to be that team to knock off Golden State in a couple of years, I'd say, come on. I mean, no.
How great would it be? Minnesota-Milwaukee NBA Finals.
That'd be some good
against Cat.
Some good travel time. So I think it's ridiculous when people mention, oh, they're going to knock off Golden State. They can't even not lose 50 games in a season. So let's start there first. And then, they can't.
I'm not even talking about that.
Well, other people go,
yeah,
Golden State in a couple of years. Minnesota may be the team. They can't shoot threes. Malik Monk would have been, I think, a great pickup. I would have wished the Bulls would have taken, if they would have taken Malik Monk, I would have been so goddamn excited. But they took Markkanen instead. I'm not that excited.
But your second favorite team did, so you should be equally
I know.
excited.
I thought the Hornets kicked ass. We'll get into the other teams here pretty soon. But I'd say Minnesota, you got Jimmy Butler. He's not going to be. I mean, Tony Towns, he's the guy. He's going to be the guy.
Yes.
Yeah, Jim Butler's not. He's that number 2 guy. Andrew Wiggins, see if he can be a number 3 guy. So you need 3 All-Stars. You need 3 All-Stars to be very good, and they may have that right now. So we'll see how they do. I say no playoffs right now. Maybe in a couple of years. And Jimmy Butler, I think this may be only a 2-year thing. He's got 2 years. He got 3 years on his contract. 3rd year's a player option. So he's not going to pick that up, obviously. So I don't know why. It just got to depend. Maybe he wants to stay with Thibodeau. Maybe Minnesota's got something going. Or maybe some other team says, here's $200 million. Play for our team. So we'll see when he will be around 32 years old or so.
And that's completely my position regarding this. They have to keep improving. Thibodeau's still got to be there for Butler to want to be there.
Yeah, 2 years.
2 years. And I agree with you on the point that people are saying, oh, they could dethrone Golden State here in a couple of years. I'd say maybe not. I do think they will be able to compete with them here in a few years. Again, assuming that Cat and Wiggins and Butler stay together here and keep improving, I think that you could make the argument that they can make a run at Golden State, depending, too, on if Klay Thompson would stay in Golden State. But I saw some people saying that Jimmy Butler is the biggest star. I mean, he's the next Kevin Garnett in terms of that best Minnesota player to come in. I thought Kevin Love certainly was up there. Maybe, obviously, Kevin Garnett had a little more playoff success because Kevin Love never made it to the playoffs with the Timberwolves. But I even think that Karl Anthony Towns coming into town, pun intended, I think this is still more his team. I don't think Butler just comes in and automatically people say, this is the best thing to happen since Kevin Garnett. I think Karl Anthony Towns has proven in 2 years that he is that guy. And I think this is his team. And Jimmy Butler, I mean, they can coexist, but Jimmy Butler does not automatically overtake this team.
I do like Jimmy Butler's a pretty good defender. Karl Anthony Towns, could he stop a Durant or a Curry for a bit? I don't know. So if you have 2 guys that could maybe stop the Golden State's 2 guys, we'll see. Andrew Wiggins isn't very good on the defensive end, so we'll see if he improves. But they may have a couple guys who could give Golden State trouble. But before we start talking NBA championship, let's not finish last for the 12th fucking season in a row.
If Cleveland had a GM, do you think they would have gotten Jimmy Butler?
Well, it is. His name's LeBron James. He's the GM.
Oh yeah, that's true. I am sorry. I forgot about the current GM.
I don't know what the Bulls could have gotten. They asked, I think, for 2 picks from the Celtics, the 3rd pick, and maybe one of next year's Nets picks, which would have been great. But I don't know if they could have gotten a better deal elsewhere. 1st-round pick, a starting guard, and a backup point guard who may or may not be good. So I don't know what they could have gotten from other teams. Yeah, maybe this is the best they could have gotten. I don't know. Other teams of note, there wasn't really many surprises in the top 10. Everybody went basically where they were supposed to. I would say, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say...
I'm surprised that Tatum went 3, because I think a lot of people had Josh Jackson picked there. And once he had said that he wasn't going to work out for the Celtics, I said, I think that might be the thing that tips the scales in favor of Tatum. Tatum had rave reviews from the Celtics in the private workout that he had with them. So I think there were a few people out there that were stunned. But
is it back?
It is back.
Oh, great.
I think overall, Tatum going 3 to Boston would be the mild surprise in the top 10.
I would rather have him than Josh Jackson.
Yes, agreed.
Tatum's an offensive guy. Josh Jackson doesn't seem to be a very good shooter. And if you're not a shooter in this day and age, well, that's not going to be great for you. I think we both agree here. You mentioned them. Sacramento Kings, folks. They did some things. They picked some guys. De'Aaron Fox, good pick. They traded down from 10 with Portland to get 2 guys. They got Josh Jackson, Jaren Jackson, Billy Jackson, Justin Jackson from the Tar Heels. They got Harry Giles, who's can't get on the goddamn floor, but if he could, he might be good. And they got Frank Mason, I from Kansas in the with the 4th pick of the 2nd round. So they got 4 guys we've all heard of who were very good last year, except Harry Giles. I like this. Yes, I thought this was a great draft for Divac and the crew.
A++++. I cannot express how much I love the Kings draft. Again, you get 4 recognizable players, all from 4 different winning basketball programs at the collegiate level, and I think that will help a team like Sacramento that has kind of lost its winning ways here for much of the last decade or so. I think it's absolutely great. I thought De'Aaron Fox was the best player in the draft, or the one who was ascending the most. Dynamic player. He did outdo Alonzo Ball in the NCAA tournament. Some people might forget that. So I thought De'Aaron Fox was absolutely great for them. To get Frank Mason III, a guy who just kept getting better and better as he played in college, that's great. I think Sacramento is definitely put themselves in a position where we can talk about them as a playoff team here within about 2 to 3 years or so.
Are they your Cleveland Browns?
Well, in terms of dysfunction, yes.
And in terms of, they might be something in a couple of years.
I think they are in a little bit more difficult situation than the Browns because the Western Conference is so much more difficult. But they definitely improved themselves, I think, the most out of any team this year, at least in terms of relevancy.
What if I told you? What if I told you Sacramento won one more game than Minnesota last year?
That would surprise me.
Well, that's what happened.
Yeah, that surprises the hell out of me.
The Kings, they were one game worse. They were 32-50, and Minnesota was 31-51. The Lakers and the Suns, only 2 teams with the worse record than Minnesota. So Minnesota.
What was their record after the Cousins trade?
Not sure. Kings were 32-50. When did he get traded? February?
Yeah, right after the All-Star game.
Right after the All-Star game. They have Dave Yeager as their coach, former Sioux Falls Skyforce coach. On, let's see, pre-All-Star break, they were 24-33 before the All-Star break. So you do some math here. They won 8 games after the All-Star break. They won 8-17 after the All-Star break. So
I mean,
not good.
Not good, but expected, given that Cousins had left town.
Markelle Fultz went 1. He can score some points, but he's on a terrible team. Lonzo Ball doesn't score a lot of points, but he gets everybody else involved. He goes to the Lakers at 2.
LeVar knew it. He absolutely knew it.
He knew it.
He said it from 2 months old or 2 years old. He's like, I knew Lonzo was going to be a Laker. I just knew it. Shut up, LeVar. I hate this guy.
There was a rumor out there that he might be on WWE Raw tomorrow night.
I saw that.
I hope this happens. I hope this happens.
I hope him with a real chair I hope they fucking do whatever they possibly can to.
Well, you watch. If he's on and I text you, Stacking, turn it now. Turn it now. He's on. He's going to be on in 10 minutes.
I might watch it. Yep.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep. Is this on USA?
Yep. The man you hate the most. I hope he's on there. They're at the Staples Center, I believe. I hope Mike Kelly's on. I don't know what he would do. It'd be very entertaining. I can't imagine he would get physical, but who knows?
Get the shit kicked out of him. That's what I want. That echo.
God damn, this is something else. Something else. So he thinks they're making the playoffs next year. Does pop a ball. It's a bit ridiculous.
Yep.
They're not making the playoffs, but Fultz, we talked about him maybe a little bit on the podcast. Yeah, I'm not big on Philadelphia because their best player, Embiid, never plays, so that's not great.
Simmons didn't play last year.
And he's never played before, and here you got Fultz. What I'd assume would be like the shooting guard, and Simmons is going to be the point guard. So Philadelphia is interesting, but I don't think they're going to be any good. Any thoughts on those top two guys? Fultz and Ball, seemingly completely different players.
I just think a lot of people are liking Philadelphia perhaps a little too much here, and maybe they like them because the Eastern Conference is so crappy. I mean, it is what it is. Lonzo going to LA, and I will never hear the end of it from LeVar. So he's an annoying little fuck. And I'm sorry, LeVar is not Lonzo. But I think overall it'll work. Chelsea now is joining the show.
Good. You have any thoughts on the Ball family, do we?
Yeah, the Ball family. Lonzo and LeVar. Okay, never mind. So over it.
Okay. What about?
They are the Kardashians of the sports world.
Oh God, why do you even watch them then? It's not worth your time.
It's very bad. What do you make of players going after the kid because they hate the dad?
I think it's funny that Embiid, he's got the biggest target on his back. And I think he knew that already. I think what helps a little bit ease the blow is what he did in the Reebok commercial that aired before the draft. You know, poking fun at his dad a little bit. I think it shows that he's got a sense of humor about him. But yeah, there's never been a rookie, I would say, that's had as big a target on his back. Because people just want him to pay the price for what his dad's doing. Than Lonzo Ball.
I thought you said biggest target like Jackie
No. I do think another big winner, though, in the draft is Charlotte.
Oh, we like them.
Because, A, you got Malik Monk, but 2, you got Dwight Howard before the draft, and you got a first-round pick. You only had to give up a second-round pick, plus a couple of other guys who I don't. You know, Miles Plumlee does not do anything for me.
They won that trade. They won that trade.
You put Dwight Howard with Kemba Walker and Malik Monk, and isn't there still one of the other Kentucky guys there?
Miles Kidd-Gilchrist, but he's bad.
Okay.
Frank Kaminsky, the guy.
Frank Kaminsky, I mean, he can show some improvement. So I think Charlotte's definitely making the playoffs next year on the Eastern Conference side. I would give them a far better chance at making it to the playoffs than it would Minnesota in the West.
They have one of the Zellers. They got Dwayne Bacon from Florida State, who I thought was pretty good last year. They got him in the second round. So that was really good.
If you listen to the Hornets guy, though, that was announcing it, it was Dwayne Wade.
Dwayne Wade! Close. I'd rather have Dwayne Bacon than Dwayne Wade right now.
Yeah.
And what they had, they picked Frank Jackson. I believe the point guard from Duke. I believe they kept him. So they get, I believe they kept him. They had a bunch of trades. It seemed like every pick, almost every pick in the second round was traded or had been traded beforehand. Literally, I'm looking at the list here. There's maybe like 10 picks in the second round that were kept from the original team when the draft was supposed to happen. So second round picks. All of them get traded. So like the Hornets, like Sacramento, Minnesota probably got the best player because they got Butler. Any other draft thoughts? Any guys? De'Aaron Fox is your guy that you think is the best out of this whole draft at the end? He's the one guy?
I think so. I think he just does so much. He was in the Malik Monk's shadow for a large part of the season at Kentucky, but towards the end, especially in Kentucky's March Madness run, De'Aaron Fox played better than Malik Monk.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what put a lot of people on the radar. I think he is going to be an absolute star in this league. I think Jason Tatum is going to be really good too. And Lonzo Ball, I think, in his own right, will be good too. But I think De'Aaron Fox, when it's all said and done, is the best player in this draft.
How many players from this draft make an All-Star game?
This year?
Ever? 3? 4? Pick last show. I'll touch on your Oregon guys here. They all went within about 10 picks of each other.
I do have a thought on that. Yep.
Jordan
on the draft.
Yeah, Frank Jackson. He went to New Orleans, so Hornets didn't get him. Jordan Bell, the Bulls picked him. That would have been fine, but he went to 19 different teams. He ended up with Golden State, so Jordan Bell with Golden State. So you can hate him now, stacking, since he's going to win a lot.
No, don't make a trade with the best team in the league. If they want him, they must see something that every other team doesn't. If they really want him, don't make a trade with him. It's like the Patriots. Why would you trade Brandon Cooks, a phenomenal wide receiver with the New Orleans Saints? Why would you trade him to New England where he's just going to tear people apart this year? Don't do it. Just don't do it. I love Jordan Bell. He plays great defense, shot blocking machine, can rebound. I mean, he was I think the overlooked player coming for the Ducks going into the tournament because of the injury to Dorsey.
No,
right? Wasn't it Dorsey that got injured?
Oh yeah. The other guy, did the other even get drafted? Chris Boucher. I don't think Boucher didn't even get drafted.
Boucher, yeah, I'm sorry, it wasn't Dorsey.
Well, not even drafted.
And that certainly sucks. But Jordan Bell was the big reason why Oregon got as far as they did. And
Golden State doesn't need a lot of guys that can score. They need nobody that can score. They don't need to add a single guy that can score. And Jordan Bell doesn't need to score at all, so that's a good pickup for them off the bench.
Yep.
Tyler Dorsey went to Atlanta, and Dylan Brooks went to Memphis. He ended up in Memphis. So
I have to cheer for the Grizzlies because Dylan Brooks is there.
3 guys who all could have came back, and they were all second-round picks. You didn't like it at the time. You said, why don't these guys come back? Because they're not first-round picks, and they were not first-round picks. And Oregon probably would have been one of the favorites next year if they all would have came back, and now they're all going to be second-round picks. Bad decision,
folks. They would
folks.
Final Four easily next year. So, yeah, I'll give a check mark to me for that one. And, terrible decision by all of those Ducks.
Terrible. Pick a year. Again, we picked some years last year. Pick a year. What was it? Yeah, pick a year.
2005.
So we're going to look at how many All-Stars so don't think, there's 10 All-Stars in every draft. Sometimes there's none, sometimes there's 5 or 6. All-Stars, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, appear to be 4 players here that have been All-Stars. Darren Williams, Chris Paul, Andrew Bynum, David Lee. And I don't think Andrew Bogut ever made an all-star team, but he did make an all-NBA team, whether that's for defense or whatever. So you could say, Bynum, Paul, Darren Williams, Bogut, Danny Granger was good for a time, and David Lee. So there were 6 in this draft, 6 really good players. You had other folks who were decent, like Raymond Felton, Marvin Williams, Charlie Villanueva, Channing Frye, who's still in the league. Yep. So there was, maybe 10, Gerald Green. There were Nate Robinson, Jared Jack. So there were anywhere from like 10 to 12 good above-average players that lasted, that are still in the league. And there were 4 or 5 that made all-star teams. So what would you say in this draft, who would be those guys that are making all-star teams?
Well, Lonzo Ball will.
Okay.
De'Aaron Fox.
Okay.
Malik Monk.
Okay.
Let's see. I'd love to say Zach Collins, but I don't think I can right now. What the hell? I'll throw Frank Mason III in there at some point.
Really?
I think he's going to be the point guard eventually for the Kings. I think the Kings are going to be one of those.
Well, they're on the same team.
Well, you're going to have point guard and shooting guard. At some point, I think Frank Mason can do it.
Okay.
That's the real wild card.
I would agree with you as a fucking wild card. Yes, I don't think he will be a starting point guard, let alone a goddamn all-star. Those 3-4 guys. That.
Who has Sacramento got to run the point?
De'Aaron Fox.
Is he going to be their point?
He's point guard.
See, I would lean towards him as the shooting guard. Okay, so never mind. Scratch Frank Mason.
All right, we'll get rid of
I was thinking you would maybe make De'Aaron more of the shooting guard, but
if that's it, that's 3 guys.
Jackson.
I would say
I got 3 guys. Those 3.
That'd be fine with me. Yeah, maybe Fultz does. Maybe Fultz.
Yep, you're gonna have a lot of good players in this draft, but no one transcending.
Yeah, 3 all-stars, good enough for me. There you go. What else is tripping your trigger in the world of sports? What's been on the blog lately?
Oh, boy, I should remember what I put in the blog. NBA winners. Vegas Golden Knights had their expansion draft.
How'd they do? You gonna be a bad team?
Got some pretty good players. I mean, got some veterans like Marc-Andre Fleury from your Penguins.
That's right.
They took Eric Holla from my Marcus and my Minnesota Wild team. Not a huge fan of that, but they are sending a pick. I don't know how Vegas has so many draft picks, but they do. And they're trading some here and some there. So overall, I think Vegas did okay. The NHL draft was this weekend in Chicago. I couldn't tell you anything about any of these guys. So there's my extension of the coverage of the NHL draft.
Good enough for me.
We're done with that now. So yeah, that was some pretty big news there. The Twins should play all 162 games on the road now. I am making this a mandatory effort by Major League Baseball because the Twins have the second best road record in Major League Baseball, only to the Houston Astros. So
trying to sweep.
They sweep Cleveland too.
Yeah, they're up 2-0 in the second inning. So
would that not be something?
That would be something.
You get swept in a 4-game series at home, and then back the following weekend and sweep them in 3 at their stadium. It's just fascinating to me. I don't know if you've looked at Houston's home record at all.
It's not great.
But they are. It's not. It's 25-16.
23.
So I am.
They're
23-16,
which is still very good. I mean, it's.
Yeah. It is, but they have a lot more losses at home than they do on the road.
Yeah.
So I am going to make a bold prediction and say that the Twins are going to take 2 out of 3 down there in Houston when they play. I think it's sometime in July.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm excited because if the Twins make the playoffs, or if they're in that one-card wild game, maybe they'll be the road team. And a team like Tampa Bay or Boston, and they can be on the road, which is good and preferable. And they win that game, and they would play Houston, and they could play our Houston team on the road a couple times, and they wouldn't have to play at home because I don't know what it is. They're playing the same teams on home as they are on the road, and it's a completely different team. So I don't know what it is. But I think they already took 2 or 3 from Cleveland a month or so ago in Cleveland.
Yep.
And they may take 2 or 3, if not sweep them here today. So I don't know what it is. I don't know how to explain it. They're in Boston coming up next week for a 3-4 game series. So we'll see what they can do against the Red Sox, who are not lighting the world on fire. So
the end of June and July are the most critical. Like this next 5-week stretch is the most critical stretch of the Twins season because if you look at the teams that they have to play on the road and who are coming to Target Field, it's a pretty daunting schedule for them.
You sure?
Pull it up here. I think it is.
Just on the road.
I was looking at this. You have Boston. obviously considering them. Kansas City's playing a lot better baseball here as of late. So I think they definitely shouldn't be taken lightly. They're on the end of this road trip here. And then in July, you do have the Angels and the Orioles coming to town. Ideally, you would hope to go 5-2 against those clubs, but we'll see. A 3-game trip to Houston, and then you have New York at home for 3. So New York will probably take 2 or 3 there. Home to Detroit, so hopefully the Twins could take 2 or 3, and then you're at the Dodgers for 3 and at Oakland for 3. So I mean, I just think you're looking at some of these teams that they have to play in the month of July, and it's going to be difficult for them. But if they can kind of stay afloat, August and September look a hell of a lot easier. And I think that they are in line to make a wild card at this point.
Who are your wild cards? Assuming, or what's your playoffs look like?
Well, New York and Boston seem to be running away with well, not running away, but I think they are in control of the AL East. Baltimore has been a huge disappointment. I think at some point Tampa Bay will taper off.
So you like Boston and New York, they'll make the playoffs some combination.
Yep.
Houston will.
At this point, I would say then it's going to be Houston for sure in the West. I'm going to say Cleveland in the Central, and then that last wild card's going to come down to Minnesota and Seattle, and I will give it right now to the Twins.
So you like the Twins to make the wild card. I like Tampa Bay to stay there all year long. Tampa Bay is probably our Memphis Grizzlies. You don't like them. I like them a lot.
Oh, I like them. I
like them for the playoffs.
When they went to the World Series and had to lose to Philadelphia, I was all on
them. And I was not. So I like Tampa Bay's in the wild card game against Boston or New York, and I do not like Seattle. So despite winning 6 in a row or whatever.
They played really well.
They have.
2-8 start.
They have. They've been very, very good. Share a little bit of this, if you will. You've talked with Marcus Traxler about his experience at the U.S. Open.
Yes.
Let's talk about. We didn't have a show last week, so the golf was on. What did you take away from your conversation as far as the ratings being bad? But there's a lot of good players, and we've had this discussion many times.
And he said it as well. I mean, I asked him a lot about the experience, like how different it was, on that Sunday, being there live with the chase, seeing it all happen as it unfolded, versus, just the excitement and energy there at Erin Hills versus, watching it on TV. And he said it was great and everything, and he thinks that golf is in a better position than you and I do.
Yes.
Because of the strength of all the good players. And golf, to me, has a lot of these they have a lot of good players. But if you really want golf to be in the conscientious mind of a sports fan or even a casual fan, you need your stars to step up, like the Rory McIlroys and Jordan Spieths. I'm following more of the Travelers Championship here this weekend, in large part because Jordan Spieth is leading. Oh, yeah. He is a guy who I like, and I think who a lot of other people like, and will follow the tournament more because he is winning. So golf needs someone like him to reel off like 4 or 5 wins here in the next couple of months, including a major victory, maybe at the PGA Championship or at the Open Championship if he so desires. But you need someone like him or Rory to win 2 or 3 of the next 4, 5 majors or whatever, because you've had 7 first-time major winners in the last 7 majors. That speaks to golf's
parity,
the strength of golf in terms of how many good players you have. But I mean, who gives a pardon me for saying that Brandt Snedeker or Danny Willett aren't great golfers, but how the hell does that move the needle or turn the dial for anyone who wants if golf wants to see their ratings jump. It doesn't. I think a couple other things that led to the rating demise for the U.S. Open, the high scoring. That's something we normally don't see at a U.S. Open. The style of the course was more link style than what a typical U.S. Open is. So that maybe had something to do with it. So yeah, I mean, golf's in a good spot in terms of, the avid golf fan who would watch week in and week out with these tournaments and all these really good players. They have They have a lot of good players, but no star that's going to be able to bring guys in. And I asked David Schottenkirk for his thoughts because we had brought his name up in the Google chat, and I did read what he had said. I don't know if you had heard it or not.
Yes.
But, he said, Spieth,
we are frozen.
Japan. I mean, so a lot of people from all over the world, but the one thing you can look at that is that Hideki Matsuyama has not won a major yet. Day we thought was going to get up there. He's only won one, and he's really fallen off here as of late. Now he has had some personal tragedy in there. I believe was it his mother that passed away? Or
sure.
I thought something with that. His mother was sick. So he's had to deal with that. But, I mean, Brooks Koepka doesn't do a whole lot for me. He's a good guy. But, Dustin Johnson, let's see him win a few majors. So,
what I find interesting,
Soccer has to start somewhere. Ricky Fowler, Justin Thomas, then Hideki will either already be stars or they either are stars already or will be stars. I've never heard of this Justin Thomas fella. I don't pretend that I follow golf a lot, apart from the majors. I couldn't tell you who wins the John Deere Classic or the Houston Shell Open or the Waste Management Classic in Arizona in February. Golf I love playing golf, and I love watching the majors for the most part, but it's not a sport that I avidly follow. So I had never heard of this Justin Thomas fella. I did see that awesome putt that he had on Saturday. But you're right that every star has to start somewhere. But if you want to be a true star, you got to win more than one major, one tournament that people have heard of or give a damn about. So I'd say overall, I mean, and Mark said he had a great time, would love to go back. It's something that it was off his sports bucket list, and that's great. But he agrees that golf needs some stars, but he thinks it's in a better place than you or I do. And I think you and I are on the same page of if you want golf to be in a better spot, you need someone to win a little more consistently and have people tune in to watch him dominate. Like when Tiger Woods won the U.S. Open by 15 strokes at Myrtle Beach, 15 years ago or so? Or maybe it wasn't 15 strokes.
2001.
It was
It
was a lot.
I'd much rather watch that than what I saw this past weekend.
Yeah, the leaderboard going into Sunday, you had heard of Ricky Fowler. Maybe some people had heard of Brooks Koepka. And the other people were no-namers, essentially. That's not going to help golf at all.
And nobody watched, nobody cared. Yeah, it's not. Dustin Johnson, it's interesting how he had the problem with cocaine, and that just kind of goes away. Where I feel like if this was an NFL player or an NBA player, or let me just say a black athlete, this would have been something that would follow him. And then it's like, well, he had a problem, he went away, he apparently got it fixed, and he's fine now. So could you imagine if, insert black athlete here, Draymond Green had a Colin Kaepernick, oh my God. Draymond Green had a cocaine problem, and then he just went and got it fixed. How would that look? That wouldn't look very good, and people would be talking about it all the time. And it doesn't help that the three top players in the world don't even make the cut. I mean, that's embarrassing.
Right. Yeah.
McIlroy, Jason Day,
Absolutely.
Dustin Johnson. Justin Johnson was the favorite to win the tournament. I wonder when the last time the favorite to win the tournament, or any of the top 2 or 3, didn't even make the cut. Maybe it happens more than I think, but that's not good. Let's take a look at we know who the leaderboard was last Sunday. Look at the 2016 U.S. Open. Dustin Johnson won. You had Jim Furyk, Shane Lowry, Scott Piercy, Sergio, some guy named Brandon Grace from South Africa, Kevin Na. That was your top 7. That was everybody within 5 shots of the lead at the end of the round. Not a great board right there. Masters
I would
last.
say it was better though than this year.
Okay, Masters last year. Danny Willett won. He'll never win another major again. Jordan Spieth was second. Lee Westwood was there. Paul Casey, J.B. Holmes, Dustin Johnson was 4 shots back. Then we have the amazing duo of Soren Kjeldsten from Denmark and Matthew Fitzpatrick from England at even par, 5 shots back. That's your top 7 or 8. So just a who's who of who the fuck are you at the top of these leaderboards in the top 5. So
I would say out of the 3 tournaments there that we just discussed, this year's U.S. Open, last year's U.S. Open, and last year's Masters, the Masters had the best name, the biggest names that are recognizable that you could get people to watch.
And we know how well Jordan Spieth does in a major on Sunday. So
Gets the bet.
Maybe don't do that. Maybe don't do that. How about it?
But he was leading, if I recall. Yeah. So, I mean, naturally, I think people would tune in to watch because of Jordan Spieth and his star power.
He had last year's Masters. Here's Jordan Spieth round by round. 66, 74, 73, 73. Whoops.
Not good.
He started. He finished 2 under.
Yeah.
So he was 6 under after the first day, 4 under after the second, 3 under after the third. Yeah, he was not a good weekend there last year for the Masters. So.
But yeah, I just think that golf needs someone, and Chuck also mentioned that the purses are getting bigger. But at some point, that's
well, what?
Down, and if they're
that's a good point. But what sport isn't? Is there a sport out there that the purses are getting smaller? No.
Not that I don't think so.
Of course, it's going to get bigger. It's always going to get bigger. Your last TV contract is going to be bigger than the last. The contracts are going to. I mean, David Carr got 2. Derek Carr got $125 million.
Yep.
I mean, would we have gotten that 10 years ago? No. So of course the sponsorship and NASCAR is awful right now. That would be interesting to look at where their sponsorships and purses are. But yeah, I mean, Bryce Harper is going to get a $400 million contract in 2 years.
Yeah.
Everything's going up. So it's a good point to say yes. Sponsorships are going up, so they're in a good spot. They're not going down. But what sport just ever has the things gone down? Nothing goes down. It always goes up.
Exactly. And I think golf's a little different, too, because of the fact that it's an individual sport. So how does golf, I mean, you don't really have to divvy up
among teams
advertising dollars amongst all the players. At least I don't think they do. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's unlike the NBA or the NFL, where Major League Baseball, and I would think hockey would do it as well, but where you would have to, get some of this television money to all 32 clubs. You don't have to do that with golf. So if golf itself is not, if the networks aren't making as much money in terms of ads because they're getting such low ratings, at some point they're going to say, you know what? We're not going to pay to cover this sport as much as we have in the past. I don't know if that's the fact why ESPN now isn't doing anything other than the first 2 rounds of the Masters. But, I mean, you just look at the way that they've kind of pushed golf off in terms of and you can see it. People just aren't watching it nearly as often as they used to, unless you have that star power.
I'd be interested to see where that TV money goes. And, I mean, the Masters, they leave literally hundreds of millions of dollars on the table because there's no ads, and they just they're old school, and
they have their 3 corporate sponsors: IBM, AT&T, and I'm forgetting the other one, but
it's they don't have it out there. It's on CBS. Fox, they agreed to pay $93 million a year to broadcast the U.S. Open and the U.S. Women's Open and the Senior Opens. If they would put the Masters out there, I think you could easily get $200 million for, the Masters. Who wants to broadcast the Masters? NBC. You want it, ABC, ESPN, who wants it? So, golf. Get excited about it.
Ooh.
Anything else as we wrap it up? What's coming up here? You got July 4th on Tuesday, 9 days away. Kind of it was on the weekends here the past couple of years. Bad spot this year on a goddamn Tuesday. Terrible.
Yeah, next year is going to be the best, the better of the days, or in recent times, because it's on a Wednesday. So people are either going to take the whole week off, or they're going to take that Thursday, Friday off, perhaps. Tuesday here, I'm taking Monday off.
I should take
I'll come back to work on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So. It is what it is. Connor McDavid, I was talking about the Golden Knights and their expansion draft that coincided with the NHL award show. Connor McDavid won the Hart Trophy, which is the NHL's MVP award. And there are 2 players, I don't know if you read this or saw this or not, that have won the award. And I think I put this in the blog, but
Younger?
2 players who have won the award prior to their 21st birthday. Besides Connor McDavid. Do you know who they are?
I assume Wayne Gretzky?
Yep.
The other one? How about Jaromir Jagr?
No.
Mario Lemieux?
No, but it's a Penguin. You're with the right team.
Sidney Crosby?
Yes. That is some extremely good company for Connor McDavid to be a part of. So
Crosby, Gretzky, McDavid.
I think the NHL is going to be very intriguing this year. It helps that the Golden Knights are going to be a part of it. But
so how's this affect the divisions now, or doesn't it?
The Pacific Division will add a 7th team, or add an 8th team. I'm sorry. Previously, they had just 7 teams in both Western Conference divisions. So Vegas goes to the Pacific. The Central will remain the same.
There are 31 teams now?
What's that?
How many teams are there?
31.
How? So somebody's got to be off. The Central's
the only division that won't have 8. They'll have 7.
Oh.
So, I would think at some point, I think it's great that the NHL has moved to Vegas. Get a market that's excited. They've already sold out every home game for this season, and they'll be 2 or 3 years before they're probably making the postseason. But the NHL needs to contract teams, and I'll give you 3 right off the bat here. Get rid of the Florida Panthers, or move them somewhere. Yeah, just contract them. Contract the Carolina Hurricanes, and if we want maybe one of these other, maybe a slightly bolder one, contract the New Jersey Devils.
Harsh.
The New York metropolitan area needs 3 teams, and the Devils' ratings, local television ratings, are among the worst in the NHL. So if you're looking to do that, maybe balance things out a little bit. Move some people over. I think 28 teams in the NHL is more than enough. If you want to do 26 or hell 24, that's fine. I think 24 might be a little low here. Let's get it down to 28. Let's get rid of those 3 teams. Have 14 teams in each conference, and so be it.
You expect them to add another team in the next 5 years?
I do. I think it'll either be the top 3 cities in my mind will be Seattle, Kansas City, and Quebec. I'd say
in the West.
Quebec is the favorite. I would hope that's not the case, though, because I think you would want to balance out the
geography,
the Western Conference with the Eastern Conference. So that would mean either putting one in Seattle or Kansas City. Kansas City would make the most sense because then you would have 8 teams in the Central. I don't know if they will do that, but I would say those 3 cities would be the leaders to get an expansion team. And Seattle probably actually makes the most sense because of the fact that the Supersonics left for Oklahoma City. I think there would be an excitement there in Seattle for hockey. But I guess, like I say, those would be the 3 leading contenders in my mind, but I would rather see 3 teams get contracted rather than get one additional team added.
What I like about the NHL is that their divisions make the most sense geography-wise. There's not one team that I would say, they don't belong there. All the teams are generally in the same area, especially in the East. I mean, the East is stacked as far as geography, close together.
The Atlantic Division doesn't make a whole lot of sense because Florida and Tampa Bay are in the Atlantic, but they have to play the most Canadian teams. So that's a bit of a flight. But you're right, for the most part, like the Metropolitan Division, the furthest flight any team would have within the division itself, I think, is going to Columbus. And that would be Columbus from
Carolina.
Yeah, exactly. So you're right. The NHL does a great job, with their divisions.
Those damn Florida teams, you got to put them somewhere.
Exactly.
Twins, 3-0.
I'm not a fan that they went to 4 divisions to begin with. I think it was better the way they had it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because Metropolitan Atlantic, I mean, hell, this isn't leaders and legends here in the Big Ten.
Or the ACC.
Exactly. So
give them a name that people know about. Twins, 3-0 in the 4th. Sweeping Cleveland. That put the Twins back in first place. 2.5 games out of first to start the week. They end the week with the win, a half game up on Cleveland. Twins. It's a long way to go because the bullpen's awful. But they are on the road, and they just don't lose on the road. So 5 innings away from the Twins. Back in first place almost halfway through the year.
Their starting pitching is terrible as well, outside of Berríos, who is, I think, now surpassed Santana for that.
Sure.
For that if we're looking at Cy Young candidates, I think Berríos has surpassed Santana as of now. You have 1-2 punch. This Nick Turley pitcher, he's a turd of a pitcher. He sucks. Get him the hell out of here.
I saw you. You aggressively went after him on Twitter.
I did. Play on words.
I called him
with
shit.
His last name, but it's not that great. An ERA north of 16. That's no bueno.
Is that a highway or an interstate, or what is only north of 16?
North of 16. Well, if we're looking at, I believe even interstates run east-west. So I don't know how we're going to do that. He's definitely west of 16.
Oh, there you go. Chris Sale hasn't pitched great the last month or so. His ERA is like in 4s. But he'd be your Cy Young going away, right? I mean, I don't think anybody's going to touch Chris Sale. Houston has 2 guys, and McCullers and Keuchel, who have been out a while, injured. McCullers was back last night through 4 shutout innings, no hits. 5th inning gave up a run, then they called it quits after 5 innings. So he was fine coming off the DL through like 75 pitches. So McCullers and Keuchel, those are the best 2 in the American League, 1-2.
And here's the thing, I didn't even know Keuchel was out.
Yep.
And
don't matter. Don't matter.
The Astros are still the head and shoulders the best team in the American League.
And the Dodgers are going on a run here, folks. They are.
They're distancing themselves from the Rockies and Diamondbacks, so I think we can still put in as the 2 wild cards in the NL.
Our Rockies is kind of a prove it to me week by the Rockies. They lost 2 out of 3 to Arizona, and haven't fared well against the Dodgers. Not like the Rockies have won 6 of 10, but Arizona's won 8 of 10. Dodgers, they've won 9 of 10. So the best 3 teams in one division continue to roll. And Milwaukee and the Cubs in the Central. I think Milwaukee's there for a while. I think I like Milwaukee more than most.
Yep.
And
I agree. I think Milwaukee has some staying power. Quietly, or maybe not, the Atlanta Braves have played much better this year than I think a lot of people anticipated.
Maybe next year they can be something. They can maybe get to 500. They're 36 and 38 right now. So Looking at that
Trade
wild.
That Phillies shirt for a Braves shirt.
Go Phillies. Win, lose 110. Cubs, something I'm interested in is to see how close the second wild card gets to Colorado. And if we all believe the Cubs are winning that division, Cubs are 7.5 back of the Rockies for the wild card, but they're a half game back in Milwaukee. So if it's the Cubs or Milwaukee, that #1 wild card team, that's left out. Interested to see how close the wild card gets. I think it's going to be closer than the 7 and 8 and 9 games it's been. Maybe it gets down to 4 or 5. But hopefully it's the Rockies and Diamondbacks in a one-game playoff.
Can you imagine if the Major League Baseball playoffs, barring something happening here, would not have the Chicago Cubs a year after they won the World Series?
Yeah.
The ratings would not be very good if you have Milwaukee in there versus Chicago. And let's say either Boston or New York don't make it on the AL side. You don't have a media market like Los Angeles to pull Anaheim because you're going to have Houston in there. Maybe
Dodgers will be
the Twins. I don't think would draw nearly as well as the Indians would.
Well, I would say look at what they've had the past few years. They've had Texas, they've had Toronto, they've had Kansas City. Like if you're looking at teams that you don't want in there for your purposes of ratings, I would say Texas, Toronto, Kansas City would be fairly high on that list. So yeah, Cubs getting in would not be good. But
if the NL would have Washington and the Dodgers, and then you'd have Colorado, Arizona, and Milwaukee.
Who knows? If maybe people get on Colorado or Arizona. Who knows?
I'm excited for that prospect. I'll watch the NL playoffs. I think because they're on TBS this year. I would hope. So I don't have to watch dreadful Fox.
You would much rather see Arizona or Colorado or Milwaukee even in there than St. Louis.
Oh yes. St. Louis, go to hell.
We'll leave it at that. St. Louis, you can go to hell. That's what Nathan Stacken says. Lounge 222. Should have a show next week, July 2nd, 2 days before July 4th. So it'll be very interesting to see how people. Hopefully I can take Monday off. It's only 9 days away. I would like to take Monday off because it'd be a pain in the ass to go to work on Monday, have Tuesday off, go back on Monday or Wednesday.
That's right. Put that request in today.
Check out your blogs, check out your iTunes for the podcasts and such. And as we continue to roll on, something will happen on Sport next week. We got a very exciting edition of the 2080 Baseball Podcast later tonight. We have to tape again, so we'll talk about those first place Twins.
We still have 5 innings, Prince. We know what Minnesota sports provide us.
We're on the road. They build you up until they let you down. So there you go.
I'm petitioning Rob Manfred to give the Twins 162 road games. Let's do it for Major League Baseball.
How many signatures do you need?
I would think you would only need 31. I think the other 30, because the 31 owners will be like, sure, let's have a team play all 162 games on the road.
We'll see if it works. Next week, we'll see you at 223.